Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar Wednesday. I am Julie Matusik, and I am the Senior Manager of Standards Training and Implementation here at the National Family Support Network, and I will be your presenter for today's webinar. If you are joining us online, welcome, and you can listen directly through your computer speakers. You also have other audio options. If you have joined via the telephone number that Zoom has provided, your line has been muted to reduce background noise. For those of you that are online, please note that the link in the chat will be appearing here momentarily that has, it's a Dropbox folder that takes you to some handouts that will be relevant to you in relation to the material that we're presenting. Feel free to download those materials at any time and click on that link. Also, you can put questions into the Q&A section of the Zoom webinar console. So we ask you to feel free to use the chat to say hi, or feel free to chat a bit, put any comments throughout the webinar. But we do ask that you direct all of your questions to the Q&A section of Zoom webinar. That way we make sure we don't miss any questions. So if you are having any tech difficulties, please feel free to private message our live tech support. Cheryl is here with us today, and you'll see NFSN Tech right in front of her name in the chat. You can directly message her. And I will try my best to get to all of the questions at the end of the webinar. If I'm unable to, someone from the National Family Support Network will follow up with you after today's webinar. And also want to mention too that today's PowerPoint, as well as the handouts and a recording of this webinar, will be available on the NFSN website by this time tomorrow, and that you can access all of that. Last thing to mention before we dive in, if when you exit the webinar, an evaluation will automatically appear when you're on your screen when you exit. So we do ask that you take a minute to complete this, as it provides us with valuable information to inform the development of future webinars. All right. So let's go ahead and dive in. We'd love to get an idea of who is with us today on this webinar. So take a peek at the polls here. Take a peek at the map, I should say, and see which region of the United States you fall into. And Cheryl's going to launch a poll for us, and you can let us know. So either in one of those 4 regions of the United States, or if you are outside of the US, there's an option for Canada or other international locations. So take a few seconds here to let us know. All right, let's see those results. Okay, well, we have the strongest representation from the West Coast, but also strong representation from the South. And we also have representation from the Northeast, the Midwest, from Canada, and other international locations as well. If you're from outside of the US or Canada, if you want to put in the chat where you're located, we would love to see where folks are joining us from today. Thank you all so much for responding to that poll. All right. And let's take a look at the next poll. The next poll is about your affiliation. So let's take a peek at your affiliation. So let us know here, maybe you're with a family resource center or a family resource center network, another family support program, parent leader, early care and education, government, we have child welfare and other government, and then private funder and other. Okay, take one more moment and then we'll take a peek at those results. All right, looks like we have lots of Family Resource Center folks, family support folks, but we have representation from all of these groups. That is really great. So great diversity in what programs we're working for. So wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. And the last poll, this last poll that we'll do for right now anyway, is about the level that you work at. So are you working at the policy and systems level? Or maybe you're working at the management level. Maybe you get the privilege of working directly with families at the program level. And then of course we have the other, and feel free to put in the chat what that looks like to you. All right, let's take a peek at those results. All righty, let's see. So we have all areas represented here, but it looks like we have almost half of you are at the program level, direct service level. But so great that we have the policy systems management level represented as well. And again, if you put other, let us know in the chat if you'd like to. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for responding to those polls. It's great to learn a little bit more about who is with us today. And so let's jump in. I want to start with sharing some context about the National Family Support Network. So the National Family Support Network was founded in 2011 by 8 states. So this map originally just had 8 states that were green at the time. And over the last decade, the NFSN has quadrupled in size to now have 39 member networks, so 38 states and the District of Columbia that represent more than 3,000 family resource centers that are serving more than 2 million people annually. And our newest members, want to give a warm welcome to Minnesota and Nebraska that have joined in the past month. So welcome, welcome. The National Family Support Network's mission is to promote positive outcomes for all children and families and communities by leveraging the collective impact of state family resource center networks and championing quality family support and strengthening practices and policies. And our vision, in short, is that it's all about turning that whole map green, ensuring that all families across the country have access to quality family support services in their very own communities that are provided by strong family resource centers that are supported by strong networks. And here you'll see the areas of work that the National Family Support Network focuses on. So the first is connecting and convening member networks to enhance their effectiveness. So increasing the connectedness amongst members for peer learning and for mutual support. The second area of work relates to why we're here today, promoting family support best practice and evaluation. So raising awareness of what quality family support is and promoting a common language, standards, and evaluation of it through the national implementation of the standards of quality for family strengthening and support. And the third area of work is raising the visibility of the value and impact of family strengthening and support networks in order to strengthen and increase support for families. All right, here's our roadmap of our time together today. Going to share a little bit of background information around the standards. We'll provide an overview of the standards. We'll also talk about standards implementation at the program and network level. And then we've carved out time for Q&A. And then at the end, we'll share some resources and opportunities that are available to you through the National Family Support Network. And we'll close with an evaluation. All right, so when we are talking about the standards, our focus is on families who are responsible for raising children. So these families consist of at least one adult and one child who are related biologically, emotionally, or legally. And families, they may consist of one parent, two parents, grandparents, foster parents, legal guardians, or they may arise from a need for mutual support. Here you can see kind of where the standards started and where they've gone since. So the standards were originally developed in the California network. And since then, the National Family Support Network adopted the standards for national implementation. And then in 2020, the national network engaged member networks across the country, as well as parent leaders, Canadian family support organizations, and the Center for the Study of Social Policy to review and revise these standards with a particular focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as relevance for both the United States and Canadian context. And then in 2021, that new version was approved by the NFSN membership. So we talk about these standards. Why are they so important? So they help ensure that families are supported and strengthened through quality practice. They also create a common language and expectations across different kinds of programs. So whether you're working in a home visiting program, a family resource center, childcare resource and referral, education, and so many more, we're able now to talk in this common language. These standards are also designed to be used by all stakeholders, so public departments, foundations, community-based organizations, and families as a tool for planning, providing, and assessing quality practice. And want to really emphasize that we are not selling these standards. We want everyone to have access to and think about quality work with families. So these standards, they are available for free to download on the website. You also can download all of the standards implementation tools as well for free on the website. So definitely encourage that and want to just really underscore that we're not selling these standards. Want to talk about different groups, knowing we have multiple groups here that are represented on this webinar today. So if you are a family strengthening and support program, I know we had around half of you represent family strengthening and support programs such as family resource centers. So you can use the standards as a blueprint for implementing best practice, for self-assessment, and to demonstrate quality. And I know we have some direct service staff here today too. You can use these standards to reflect on and enhance your work with families. If you represent a network of family strengthening and support providers, you can use the standards for quality assurance, for training and technical assistance, and to adopt as an expectation for my membership. And I know we had some systems level folks here today as well. So policymakers, you can use these standards to endorse for application in your areas of influence. And funders here today, you can use the standards to integrate into requests for proposals for monitoring and quality assurance. And if you are a family within a program, you can use these standards to partner with your programs to apply the standards and can provide feedback about how well the program is applying the standards. So all of these different groups can use the standards in very concrete ways. When we're talking about using the standards at the program level, it does require the commitment and the support of all levels of program responsibility. It's not something that an executive director could do by herself, and it's not something that direct service staff could do by himself. These are, all of these pieces are required to be on board and have this buy-in and level of support. The standards, they bring together two foundational frameworks from the family support and strengthening field. So the first is the principles. So it's the principles of family support practice. This was originally developed by Family Support America. And then you may have heard of the research-based and evidence-informed Strengthening Families Protective Factors framework and its approach that was developed by the Center for the Study of Social Policy. So let's talk about these principles of family support. Want to ask first before we dive in, have you heard of these 9 principles of family support before today? So let's take a look at the poll and let us know. Have you heard of these principles before today? All right, take another couple of moments here. All right, let's see those results. All right, it's close to 50-50. Many of you have heard and some haven't yet. That is okay. So let's take a look at these. So some of you will be a little brief review and others you'll be able to say yes in just a few minutes. So these principles, they were developed by a national organization, Family Support America, in 1981, and they continue to guide and frame the field today. The first principle, this says that the staff and families work together in relationships based on equality and on respect. So while this principle, it may not seem so revolutionary to us today, at the time it was written, it presented quite a challenge to the system. At the time, the prevailing wisdom was that the staff were the experts with their education, their knowledge, and their experience, and that their goal was to quote unquote fix the problem family. But this challenged that notion and says that staff and families are actually equal, and the staff do certainly come to the table with their education, knowledge, and experience. But the families, they also bring their strengths and resources and are the most knowledgeable about their past experiences. And it is by working in as partners in relationships based on equality and on respect that we will achieve the best outcomes for that family. Let's take a look at the second principle. So the second principle says that staff enhance families' capacity to support the growth and the development of all members, so adults, youth, and children. This principle, it emphasizes that we in the family support field look at the whole family, not just the individual. If only one member of the family is participating in our activities, we want to be asking about and inviting other members of the family as well. We know that when multiple family members are involved, the family is more likely to have better outcomes. The third principle tells us that families are resources to their own members, to other families, to programs, and to their communities. So, unique to the family support perspective is that we do not see the staff as having all of the answers or doing all of the work to support families. Families themselves, they are encouraged to support other families. And so there is a strong emphasis on the connecting families to share resources such as information and peer support. Let's take a look at the next few here. So the fourth principle is what we refer to as the diversity principle. And this says that programs affirm and strengthen families, their cultural, racial, and linguistic identities, and enhance their ability to function in a multicultural society. So, like I said, this is the diversity principle, and it has two parts. The first is about respecting and welcoming diversity that families bring, be that linguistic diversity, cultural diversity, family structure, and so on. The second part is about preparing them for and connecting them with the larger community where they'll naturally interact with people very different from themselves. And this supports them to fully participate in the diverse society in which we live. Principle 5 says that programs are embedded in their communities and contribute to the community building process. So family support programs, they do not see themselves as simply social service providers. They see themselves as community builders as well. So by strengthening families, they make a key contribution to the health of the communities. And they also work to develop families' responsibility and their leadership for strengthening and building their communities. The sixth principle tells us that programs advocate with families for services and systems that are fair and responsive and accountable to the families served. So take a moment to just think to yourself about some of the major systems that families commonly interact with. So maybe things like education, healthcare, the legal system, maybe things like that came to mind. So now I want to ask you to think to yourself, are these systems fair and responsive and accountable? Often not. And so that's where our work comes in as family support providers to work with families to help improve these systems. All right, let's take a look at the last three principles. So, the seventh principle tells us that practitioners work with families to mobilize formal and informal resources to support family development. And so there is a strong emphasis in the family support field on resources. And coincidentally, or not coincidentally, the most common type of family support program is a family resource center. So you can see right in the name, the emphasis is on resources. So while no one program can directly provide all of the supports that families may need, it's our responsibility to know how to connect them to them. The eighth principle: programs are flexible and continually responsive to emerging family and community issues. So, this concept of flexibility and responsiveness are really important in our family support field because neighborhoods and communities change. A neighborhood that is majority Latinx today may be majority Asian in 5 years, and issues emerge that significantly affect families. Things like the economic downturn, the pandemic, so programs really need to be flexible and to be responsive to these changes. And last, but certainly not least, is Principle 9. So this tells us that the principles of family support, all of them, are modeled in all program activities, including planning, governance, and administration. So this is kind of the catch-all principle because it says that all of the above principles should be applied in everything you do: planning, governance, and administration. So these principles have implications for how we develop programs, how they're led, and how we support our staff. Okay, let's take a look at the next framework that these standards are based upon, and want to launch a poll to see if you are familiar with this framework. So have you heard of these protective factors before today? And Cheryl's going to launch a poll to learn if you have heard of this framework before today.
For some reason, it says a poll has been launched in this meeting and I can't click on the launch button. It's grayed out.
Oh, technology is so fun. If everybody just wants to take a moment, feel free to put yes or no in the chat. We would love to hear from you. Oh, and there it is. Just
Yep.
kidding. You just had to call it out live so it could get itself together. All right. So prior to today, have you heard of the Strengthening Families Protective Factor Framework? And just let us know on the poll here. All right. Take another moment. And then we'll look at those results to let us know if you've heard of this framework before today. All right, let's take a peek at the results now. All right. Alrighty, about 2/3 of you have heard of this framework before today, and some of you haven't yet. So let's take a minute to introduce you, and the rest of you will have a brief review. So this framework was developed by the Center for the Study of Social Policy in 2005, and it's research-based and evidence-informed. And it has been shown to increase family stability, enhance child abuse development, and reduce the likelihood of child abuse and neglect. So let's take a peek at what these 5 protective factors are. So they are here on your screen. So there's parental resilience, social connections, concrete support in times of need. So making sure families have things like food and shelter, clothing, knowledge of parenting and child development. Nobody was born with a manual, right? Like we need help with this. We need support, and the social and emotional competence of children. So those are the 5 protective factors. And again, really encourage you to dive into these. There's tons of resources on the CSSP website. If you, the link's there at the bottom, but if you go to cssp.org and then click on the Strengthening Families information, you'll be able to learn much more about the 5 protective factors. All right, so now we've talked about the 2 frameworks that the standards are based on, and they both come to life throughout the standards. And now I want to introduce you to the standards themselves. So the standards have 5 sections that each represent a key element of quality practice. And they are here in this, on the slide. So the first is family centeredness. And so working with families in a family-centered approach. Family strengthening. So supporting families to be strong and healthy and safe. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. So valuing, respecting, embracing families' diversity and advancing equity and inclusion. Community strengthening. So working collaboratively with other stakeholders. And also things like leadership development and affecting systems change are part of that section. And then evaluation. Evaluation is not, is for everyone in our field and is important to all of us in our fields. So looking at areas of the program strength as well as how we can further develop in order to guide continuous quality improvement. So that's a very high level of the 5 sections that you see in the standards. I want to talk a little bit more about the structure of the standards. And so within the standards, there's actually 15 standards themselves. And then each of those standards include 1 to 2 sets of indicators of both foundational quality and high quality. And so the foundational quality indicators, they demonstrate the basic application of the standard. And then the programs, they build upon foundational quality indicators to achieve high quality indicators, which represents deeper integration of the standard. And then each indicator is followed by 2 to 4 examples from the field that illustrate its application. So I know many of us, when we see a bulleted list, we see a checklist and things to accomplish, but these are examples. And so not all of them will be relevant to your program. And as programs are applying the standards, they are encouraged to identify their own examples that demonstrate the indicators in ways that are relevant to their communities. And that's actually wanted to mention too, that this is actually that last bullet actually is a significant focus in the standards certification training on the standards. Giving participants space and supporting them to think about their own examples that are relevant to their own programs. So just wanted to cover that a little bit more specifically. So let's talk about the difference between foundational and high quality. So foundational quality indicators create a solid foundation for the family support and strengthening programs. And these foundational quality indicators, they are designed to be met within the basic resources of a typical family support and strengthening program. And then high quality indicators, they are built upon foundational quality being in place first. So we aren't just jumping to high quality, we need that solid foundation under us. And programs are encouraged to strive to meet high quality indicators in order to serve families most effectively. And also important to mention that some of the high quality indicators may require additional capacity building or additional resources to meet. So let's take a look at the continuum down here along the bottom. So we start out over on the left side there with foundational quality not yet addressed. And then we're approaching foundational quality, and then we're meeting foundational quality. So that's where in the middle, that's where quality actually begins. And then we continue along the continuum over towards the right, where we are approaching high quality and then meeting both foundational and high quality. And so you'll see at the bottom, the arrow keeps going after we have already met foundational and high quality. And this is because quality improvement, it's an ongoing continuous process. And this is why high quality is not maximum quality. Also, too, want to mention that implementing these standards is a developmental process, and it's common that programs, they may see aspects of their work at different points on the quality continuum. And so, maybe in one area, maybe you've done a whole lot of work in advancing DEI and you see a strong success there, but maybe community strengthening, maybe that's where you really need to focus on. And so it's normal to see yourselves at different points on the quality continuum in different areas. So as we go through the standards, if you take the certification training, you may determine that you're already doing quality work in some areas, and then hopefully you also can identify areas to work on further. Let's see here. Want to take a look at this arrow with you. So for the first 4 sections of the standards, this arrow that you see here in the middle is the arrow that explains the movement from foundational to high quality. So on the left, we see foundational quality. And then on the right, we see high quality, which represents deeper integration of the standard in the program. So what moves foundational to high quality are the elements in the arrow. So let's take a look at those together. The first is formal structure. So these are things like design, policies, procedures, and intentional strategies with committed resources that ensure consistency of practice. And then staff training. So this is staff training specifically to support the implementation of the standard. And then family partnership. So partnering with families in the implementation of the standard. And so each of these elements help ensure that the standards are more deeply integrated into program practice. So for example, at foundational quality, we may do something that's good practice, which is great. But how are we ensuring that it wasn't just a one-time occurrence? But then at high quality, we've actually set up systems, trainings, or we have partnered with families to ensure that it continues to happen. So the particular elements and the number of elements needed for high quality differ for various indicator pairs. So sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2, and sometimes it's all 3, but it's never anything other than these 3. All right, let's take a look at this together. This is an actual snip of one of the pages from the standards themselves. So you can see the standard here is FC1. The program engages families to participate in program development and implementation. And then let's take a look at the foundational and high quality indicators. So those are there below. So the foundational quality indicator here is that the program solicits input from families to shape and plan the program and services. The high quality indicator is that the program's design supports partnering with families to have an active role in the development of the program. So you can see here in the arrow, it's formal structure and family partnership that are moving us from foundational to high quality. All right. So Evaluation, that section is so great that it gets its very own arrow. And you can see here the arrow that is used for that last section. So the first 4 sections of the standards have the same arrow, and then the evaluation section has its own. So similar to the other arrow, we see foundational quality on the left and high quality on the right, which again represents that deeper integration. But the elements in the arrow are different because we need different things that are going to take us to high quality with evaluation. So the first is data analysis. So collecting data is foundational, but then analyzing that data is what moves us to high quality. And sharing evaluation results. So sharing them with various stakeholders, such as the families that we work with. And then program modification. So this means changing the program as a result of what we learn from evaluation. So we aren't just doing evaluation for evaluation's sake. We're actually doing something with it. All right. I want to share with you some of the tools that you have access to with the standards of quality. And we'll talk about each of these briefly. And again, all of these are available to download on the NFSN website at any time. So just so you know that that resource is there for you. The first one we'll talk about is the program self-assessment tool. So this is designed for programs teams, so managers, direct service staff, parent leaders, all coming together to reflect on the standards implementation and quality improvement. So this is designed and used as a critical thinking exercise by program teams. And it's recommended that all team members involved in using this tool have been trained on the standards first. And then we have the staff self-reflection tool. So this consists of 18 reflection questions for staff members to use as a daily reminder to implement the standards. And I know when I worked at a family resource center, I had it right above my desk, like it was a daily reminder. So, you know, whatever is helpful for you as a team member to have this as an ongoing reminder, it was a very helpful tool. And then the participant survey, this shows how well the program is meeting the standards from the participants' point of view. So it's not a typical satisfaction survey, and similar to the staff survey, it also has 18 questions, and the questions actually mirror that on the staff checklist. So if staff members are mindful of these questions, then the program participants are likely to give a high scores. So as a reminder, all of these are on the NFSN website. If you go to nationalfamilysupportnetwork.org, you can hover over standards and then drop down to standards implementation tools, and you'll see all of these there. Also to mention too, that the participant survey is available in English and also Spanish and Chinese as well. And we've mentioned a couple of times training. So why is training so important? So I want to talk about that briefly. Just training really is a fundamental strategy for implementing these standards effectively. And you know, we're so glad that you're here today for this webinar. But just as a reminder, this is not the training itself. In order to receive a certificate, you would want to participate in the standards certification training. So I'll share with you how to do that if you're interested. But the certification training is either in-person or virtual training that is designed for all management and direct service staff, as well as for funders. And participants receive a certificate that is valid for 2 years. And the certification training is conducted by pairs of trained trainers from the member networks of the National Family Support Network. And networks, funders, and other stakeholders can also contract with the NFSN to host a certification training for programs in your area if there's not currently standards trainers in your state. So programs are highly encouraged to come as program teams of both management and direct service staff, because successful application, like we said earlier, really requires the commitment and the support of all levels of program responsibility. And one thing with the standards important to mention is that individuals are certified, so not organizations, which integrates the standards into everyone's daily work and provides a professional credential for staff. And all trainings are done live because the group work and the peer sharing are so valuable to the process of learning about the standards. Let's talk about the Training of Trainers Institute. So this is in either 4-day in person or 5-day virtual. And actually, this is a reminder, I need to update this slide. We are exclusively offering the Training of Trainer Institute virtual now. And so this is for representatives of NFSN member networks to be able to conduct the certification training in your state. So one thing that's unique for NFSN member networks is that only you have the ability to be trained trainers. Training organizations and stuff aren't able to contact us and say, hey, we want to train on the standards. It's intentional by design of the steering committee of the national network and training committees. So only network representatives are trained to be trainers, which supports the state network's capacity building and establishes a unique and essential and ongoing role for them within their system of support for families in their state. I want to share with you this map. There's a lot going on here, but it's so exciting to share with you because there's well over 15,000 people that have been trained on the standards across the country. And we've trained folks in Canada as well. And so you can see here, there's over 100 trainers that are offering these standards trainings across the country currently. And you can see how many trainings have been offered in each state. And it's just so exciting to see this map updated every single month. This is updated every month on the NFSN website. Just really exciting to see the growth that the standards have had in the past decade. All right. I want to share briefly, we talked about training, but what's the impact of the training? What's the result there of that? So folks that are participating in the training are reporting that it is enhancing their programs work with families. And that's the goal, right? So we're glad to see that they're seeing that as well. And then many of them are also using the standards implementation tools, which is why they're there, their resources to support programs implementation of the standards. So good to see that they're using those. I want to give you a moment to read over a couple of these quotes, which come to us from folks that have been trained on the standards across the country. Right, I'm seeing some hearts and thumbs up. Yes, good. So as you can see here, the standards, they help validate existing work, benchmarking it to national best practice. So really good stuff happening across the country. And I know several of you are at the network level too. So want to share briefly how networks have formed and expanded through the standard certification training. So one example that we like to highlight is from Arizona, where the standards actually provided a common language for diverse providers across the state and established a key role for the Maricopa Family Support Alliance in promoting quality practice within their system of care. And as a result, that alliance grew from 21 to 72 agencies in just a few short years. And networks also strengthen their capacity and their sustainability through developing trained trainers. And all funds that are generated through the standard certification trainings are invested back into supporting networks. And in order to ensure the accessibility and the affordability of the standards certification training, networks with certified trainers and the NFSN ourselves are only charging anywhere from $0 up to $150 per person. So that's covering the materials and the training materials and the trainers themselves and things like that. But, they're not able to charge a large amount because we want it intentionally affordable so everyone can think about quality work with families. want to share with you this this continua, and this is one of the continua that are in the handout section that Cheryl dropped into the chat earlier. So you can see here, this is for programs. So programs like Family Resource Centers, Child Care Resource and Referral, education. So those that are working directly with families. And so you'll see across the top, the steps and the sample activities, the resources that are available for each of these steps, and then the potential costs associated with each of them. So, you, by being here today, listening to the standards overview webinar, you're on that prepare phase. So you're well on your way. And then once you participate in a certification training, you'll be at the third step. So those are just a couple examples of activities that are on here. But this is very concrete, and it's in the handout section. This is also on the implementation tools page of the NFSN website as well. If you ever don't have the handouts available anymore, but it is on the website. And as we're talking about program implementation, I just wanted to share an example from my experience using the standards. So prior to my joining the National Family Support Network 2 years ago, I managed a family resource center in Corning, New York. So it's the Nani Hood Parent and Family Resource Center. And so when I began working at the Family Resource Center, we were implementing the Strengthening Families Protective Factors, as were other family resource centers across New York State. So we were doing a lot of great things. So we were facilitating the protective factor survey, had drop-in play, parent-child groups and activities, offered parent education, offered parent groups, ages and stages questionnaire screening. We were doing information and referrals, supervised visitation, community events. So we were doing lots of things that were really great and doing them as best as we knew how at the time. And let's see here. So just want to share with you, that's kind of our before, even though it's really great, right? Like it is really great. But want to share kind of our after. And so then in 2016, the New York State Family Resource Center Network contracted with the National Family Support Network to bring the standards to FRCs in New York State. So managers, direct service staff from across the state participated in a certification training. And then 12 of us became trainers on the standards. Earlier when we were talking about the Training of Trainer Institute, that's what we did there. 12 of us became trained trainers, and that helped the state to have more capacity as we began implementing the standards. So through implementing the standards, the Family Resource Center saw that the standards very much enhanced the work that we were doing already. So we were able to increase childcare offerings for parent education classes to better meet parents' needs and ensure that we were reducing as many barriers to participation as possible. We also intentionally improved partnership with parents. The staff really began to work with families more to complete parent identified needs and goals, recognizing, like we said earlier with the principals, that the parents are experts on their own families. And so the standards also gave us the structure to increase the formal structure around our outreach strategies. So not creating extra work for us, but helping us to work smarter, not harder, and with our efforts. And so the standards also helped us to improve our database system, including the analysis of the data, making sure that our programming was doing what we wanted it to do. And the standards helped us to create new opportunities to educate parents on advocacy and on leadership. And also through adopting the standards, we realized how crucial it was to have parents formally at the table to help develop and to plan programming. And then just 2 short months after having participated in the standards, I had an opportunity to participate in the inaugural NFSN Developing and Sustaining Effective Parent Advisory Committee training. And that was a great way to gather concrete tools to start a parent advisory committee. So once we started that parent advisory committee, it was really exciting to see the enhanced ownership that the families now had. So that's just a glimpse into my journey at the program level with the standards. And so looking a layout level up, now we'll look at the network implementation continuum. So this looks very similar to the program level implementation continuum, but this is for networks of family resource centers and family support programs. So this gives networks the same concrete steps, sample activities, and resources and potential costs associated with each of those steps. So similarly, the standards overview by being here, that's where it all starts in that prepare phase, certification training, hosting a certification training, developing trained trainers, creating implementation plans. There's all of these steps and activities to support them. So this also is available for download on the National Network website on the implementation page as well. I want to share a couple examples with you just to give you an idea of how different they look from state to state. So this one comes from one particular network and it shows how they demonstrated that they were implementing these standards as a network. So they used a 3-pronged strategy that integrated them into training, evaluation, and membership. And so each network is encouraged to develop their own network level implementation example. Or implementation plan. This one is from another state. This is from Colorado, and this shows how they train their staff intentionally. So everyone, regardless of whether they are working directly with families or working at the front desk, janitorial, anything in between, everyone's receiving the standards of quality for family strengthening and support. That's their base training that every person is receiving. And then depending on how much interaction the team member is having with families would determine what other trainings they're receiving. So you can see here just how they have this charted out. All right, so I know this was a lot of information, and just want to talk through a few next steps. So as you're thinking about this and everything that's been said so far, why adopt these quality standards? And so some considerations for you, just, deepening practice and establishing that common language so you're able to effectively communicate with different types of programs in your area. It's a great opportunity to develop partnerships. It's a great way to utilize shared measurement systems. It is a concrete thing that you can do to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's so exciting to be part of a national movement and to be able to talk on this common language just across the country. It's really exciting. So one of the things I wanted to share with you too, after these webinars, a lot of times we would get emails that said, I'm so excited, and just what do I do next? And so we drafted this slide to help with what you may consider doing next. So if you haven't already, you may want to download the standards and review them. They're free. They're there for you to download. You go right to the nationalfamilysupportnetwork.org and you can download them. And then those 2 continua that I shared, if you're working at the program level, you would use that one. If you're working at the network level, you would use that one. But see where you are on that continua and plot out some next steps. And then consider participating in a standard certification training, whether it's offered by your state network. If you're in a state that has standards trainers, utilize them as a resource. They're wonderful trainers. Or you can access the training through the National Family Support Network. And if you're in a state where there's not currently standard certification trainings offered, you can, there's a page where you can take a peek at how to bring the training to your state. Want to pause for questions. I know a couple have come in and I know it's a lot of information. So just want to give you a moment to get your questions into the Q&A section. And while you're gathering your questions and putting those there, just as a reminder, put those in the Q&A section rather than the chat. I wouldn't want any great questions to get buried in the chat. I know sometimes it moves so quickly. So make sure your questions are in the Q&A section of the Zoom webinar console. And while you're putting your questions in, I want to share a couple resources with you. One of them is just our upcoming webinar Wednesday that is taking place. I think this is next week already. This is Family Resource Centers and how they're supporting families experiencing homelessness. So this is co-presented with another wonderful organization, and so excited to have this conversation next week. So in addition to this one that's coming up later this month, just want to call out that the Webinar Wednesday Library has a wealth of recordings and archived webinars. So for all of the previous webinars that have been held, you can access the recordings, the materials for them. All of it's on the NFSN website, and you can listen to them at your convenience. There's ones about standards. There's some more about family resource centers. There's some that are about largely, just advancing the work in our family support field. So really good stuff. They're all organized by category. Encourage you to check that out and watch for upcoming live ones as well on the website. And I know I saw some interest in the chat and questions and stuff about the certification training. If you don't have trainers in your state, encourage you to sign up for the certification training with the national network. And we have openings. I think there's still a couple in August, and then we have another training coming up in September as well. So feel free to hop on those and make sure you save yourself a seat. Those trainings are conducted virtually, and there's more information on the website, right on the homepage of the National Family Support Network website. And I know I touched on briefly just how valuable this training was. I actually participated in this training myself as a Family Resource Center staff member because I was so excited to start a Family Resource Center or start a parent advisory committee at our Family Resource Center. And just it was a fabulous training. And now the training is actually co-trained by an NFSN staff member as well as an experienced national parent leader. So there's still some seats in the August training, and then it won't be offered again until October. So make sure you check that out if you're interested. And at least feel free to just mentally bookmark it for future opportunities. This is a tool as we are engaging parents formally in our program. So really helpful, concrete examples. And here's my contact information. I'll leave this up here while I'm doing some questions. Let's see here. And for just to share, I know it was mentioned that the slides and everything would be on the NFSN website. Feel free to access that for any of the links. I know like the Center for the Study of Social Policy website and things like that are on there. You honestly could even Google if you go to cssp.org and then just to click on their Strengthening Families tabs, that'll take you right to the protective factors. But if there is another link in particular that you are looking for, happy to drop that into the chat. Just let me know. Let's see. And there's a question around, has there been any discussion about adding B for belonging to DEI for diversity, equity, and inclusion? And that's a great question. So just to share a little bit of context, the standards of quality were reviewed and revised with an eye towards diversity, equity, and inclusion in 2020, which I can't believe was already 3 years ago. Prior to that, the DEI section was called Embracing Diversity. So we, just through recognizing that need, we changed and modified and enhanced it to diversity, equity, and inclusion. But we're always learning and growing. We're always enhancing. So that's it. Thank you for flagging that, Linda. Really appreciate that. And those are conversations that we continue to have at the National Network as we consider the next time the standards will be reviewed and revised again. So thank you for mentioning that for sure. And then, so there's a question about the standard certification training and what happens after, I mentioned that you're certified for 2 years, and then after that, then what? So for the past couple of years, we have told everybody, you'll just retake the certification training because we have reviewed it with an eye towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if you took the training in 2020, the training that you received was not the same. It did not have that same level of revision. It wasn't the most updated version. So we would tell anybody, you would retake the certification training because it has been revised. And so now that they have been revised, we are this year we'll be bringing back the recertification training, which is a lighter touch certification training. So the focus is not on like the 101 level where you're just getting oriented with the standards and indicators. It's really the focus on implementation to have deeper conversations, and it is lighter touch in terms of how long it is. So it is a bit shorter. And so that's not out yet. We're a small team, and so we have been really focused on getting the virtual certification piloted for in-person. So networks are able to offer the in-person version, and then the recertification training is where we'll be turning our attention to after that. So thank you for flagging that, David. Appreciate that very much. Great question. And there's a question about if the recording of this Zoom will be available, and yes, there will. In addition to the recording itself, the materials, so the PowerPoint and all of the handouts, everything will be on the National Family Support Network website tomorrow, by tomorrow afternoon this time. So be sure to hop over to nationalfamilysupportnetwork.org. And if you hover over Webinar Wednesdays and click, you'll see it there. It'll be under the core webinars section. Those are kind of our staple webinars that we offer throughout the year, providing this basic information on the standards and family resource centers and things like that. So that is where that will be located. And there's a question I see here too about how long it takes to attain a certification. So the certification training is 2 days long. So it's about 6 hours each day, and ample breaks in between because it's done via Zoom. But that's the certification training, and that is for you to feel confident and prepared to use the standards yourself. And then becoming a trained trainer, if you are tied to a National Family Support Network member network, so thinking back to feels like a while ago now, but that green map, if your state is green on this map, your state is eligible to develop trained trainers. So you would want to talk to the leadership of your member network if you were interested in becoming a trainer on the standards. So, and feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions related to that as well. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. So just want to say thank you so much for being here today and engaging in the chat and the polls, and great to see the excitement here with the emojis and all the love. So just want to say thank you again. And just as a reminder, when we exit the webinar today, an evaluation will automatically pop up on our screens, and that will include questions about identifying your next steps and what would support you moving forward. That really helps inform the development of future webinar Wednesdays. So thank you all again so much for being here today. And just as a reminder, this will be on the website tomorrow. We really appreciate it and hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Thanks again. Bye-bye.